Do you think a polygraph detects lies? Brad Beeler will tell you it detects something else entirely. What happens when a Secret Service agent trained to protect presidents and confront predators reveal the inner workings of the world's most controversial interview tool? Brad is a decorated federal polygraph examiner, instructor and the author of the upcoming book Tell Me Everything. He walked into rooms where most people look away, and in this conversation we go there with him. So, why do good interviewers still get false confessions? How do you stay human when questioning someone you deeply despise? And why does good interviewing sound more like jazz than a checklist? I'm An Gaiser, and this is Mastering Momentum. And this episode will challenge everything you thought you knew about truth, trust, and timing. Well, today I am speaking with someone who doesn't understand truth detection only, he lives it. Brad Beeler, retired Secret Service agent, polygraph examiner, and now author of the book Tell Me Everything. And you and I actually met because of our mutual admiration for Joe Navarro, which I understood you worked with as well in the past, or?
Definitely consulted, but more importantly, read. I mean, he truly is the greatest of all time when it comes to body language. So somebody that I highly respect.
Yeah, agreed. And he's my mentor as well. So we had conversations in the beginning about body language, but most of all, investigative interviewing quite soon, actually. And then we started to talk about reflections of the interviewing and about the techniques, etc. And also giving each other feedback sometimes about what is subjective questioning, for instance, and what is not. So right after I started this podcast, I said, I need to get Brad in as a colleague.
No, I appreciate the invite, and you've been invaluable giving me your Dutch criticism. All right. So the Dutch are very direct. They don't beat around the bush. I'm learning, and I appreciate that. When you see something that's a little bit off away from best practices, you've been great as far as kind of reeling me in, so to speak.
Oh, thank you. That's an honor because I know because of your experience, I've also found it very exciting in the beginning when you asked me, okay, give me feedback. I was like, do I have to give feedback to a polygraph instructor, ex-Secret Service agent? But we had great conversations. So let's have another conversation then.
Let's go for it.
First of all, because I have a lot of Dutch listeners, they really want to know more about you because they don't know you very well. Can you introduce yourself, what you have done in the past, your career, and what you are doing now, maybe?
Sure. I grew up in a very small town in the middle of the United States in Missouri, and I was blessed that I played college sports, soccer in college, and as part of that, I kind of got an interest in the Secret Service, so I did an internship, and during grad school, the President Clinton came in to St. Louis, Missouri, and I was more enthralled with the Secret Service agents, the men and women that were protecting him, than I necessarily was seeing the president, which is a little strange, but that really led me to believe, man, this is my calling. We have, a great job to do. It's a lot of fun. And, I decided I want to apply. And I was fortunate enough after getting my master's degree to be able to get into the Secret Service. And as far as where I went from there, I was started in Chicago. And people that aren't really familiar with the Secret Service here in the United States, It's a little different than what you have for your Dutch Secret Service. Whereas we are not necessarily an intelligence gathering organization. We started in 1865 as an investigative agency, and it was kind of in one of the great ironies of history. We were established by Abraham Lincoln. The last thing he signed into law before he was assassinated was the organization that would ultimately serve to what would have protected him. But we were signed in law to stop counterfeit money because that was really hurting the United States at that point. And then in 1901, after our President McKinley was assassinated, we started doing protection. So we have a dual role mission here in the United States. The FBI, CIA, those organizations do foreign and domestic collection, anti-terror efforts, those types of things. Whereas the Secret Service, we do protection, but we also continue to do our investigations. So that's what I started in Chicago when I first came on, was doing investigations. And I loved it. I loved talking to people. I loved doing the counterfeit investigations, those types of things. But when I saw our polygraph examiners assist the local police departments as a way to kind of give back for all the support they did in our mission, I really got to see amazement where they would do these on child sexual assault cases, homicides, and the results, what the information they were able to pull out of these individuals and shape investigations. Not everybody failed. A lot of people passed. So what I saw is, wow, this is a really invaluable tool, not just to screen our applicants to get the best qualified applicants, but also to shape investigations. So I went to polygraph school. After that, I started doing polygraphs for about 3 to 4 years. And then I did my protective mission, which was former President Bush. After that permanent protective division, I got back to St. Louis, which is my hometown, and I got back into polygraph. And St. Louis does have a high crime rate, and I was blessed to be able to assist the locals there. So got a lot of trigger time, and a lot of mistakes were made, but I learned a lot of lessons there. And then I was blessed to be able to have the opportunity to go to the Federal Polygraph School at Fort Jackson here in South Carolina. And it's where all the federal agencies, intel and law enforcement, send their polygraph examiners. And I got to be an instructor. And that's where I really learned what I don't know is we all have arrogance. We all are narcissistic. We all think we've got it all figured out. And that was where my mind was blown because I got to see all the other men and women that were instructors there that had great life experiences that now I was able to kind of cobble together and put more crayons in my crayon box there on how to do things. And I think that really helped me. And then, I finally pulled the plug and retired, and I'm fortunate enough to be able to talk to people like you now.
Yeah, thanks. And also for the great introductions. It really helps, for instance, our Dutch listeners and followers to understand. And I wanted to take it back a little bit because we also talked sometimes about, for instance, talent and that you learn a lot from teaching as well. But it must have been way earlier that you got interested in forensics or investigations so can you tell me a little bit about how that came to be?
Well, I tell you, as a little kid, I was always that person that was playing cops and robbers and I always wanted to be the cop and not the robber, for whatever that is, chasing around, when you're 5, 6 years old on your bike. But when it comes to me, as far as forensics and investigation and communication, at the age of 15, my best friend up to this day, so man, I won't say how many years that is from when I was 15, long time ago, he's deaf. And learning how to communicate with him so that he can understand me and I can understand him. And then ultimately having that progress into sign language and just truly understanding how you have to be present in a communication to, look at those lips, to be able to enunciate, to breathe life into a communication with your body language so that he can pick up on it. Because for him, every communication is like a horror movie without the soundtrack. And you can imagine if you watch a horror movie or you watch an action movie, the background soundtrack tells you that thing is about to happen, whatever it might be. If you don't have that in life, you have to adapt. And I know for you reading, and I thank you for letting me read some excerpts of your book, your upcoming book, but we talk about how things in our life create our ability to communicate better or read people better, or they form our own little abilities. And I think for me, that was very, very helpful in learning how to communicate effectively and empathize with people and slow down and listen and be truly present in a conversation because you had to be, because he could read lips, but you had to really enunciate it well. And so when I learned sign language, I could put the color into the communication. So I always like to tell people you have lyrics, you've got the soundtrack, and then you've got the music video. And you got to put all that together. And I think that's what really helped me kind of understand that at an early age.
Yeah. That was very fun to read, and people will read it in your book, right? Those 3 elements. And I have my 3-pillar method as well, which is nonverbal communication, interaction needs, and also nonverbal intelligence, gathering all the information together. Yeah. So it's quite fun to see, although we are from different worlds, but from the same experiences, that we come to the same conclusions. Maybe people will think they have an interview about me really diving into critical questions about polygraph and lie detection, but we do have the same experiences, which is quite interesting.
Yes, ma'am. I mean, we don't speak, let's say I don't speak Dutch, and if you didn't speak English and we saw each other at the airport, how would we communicate, right? It would devolve to basically caveman days, right? Which is you would be so skilled at, because you're a body language expert, is that you would be looking at facial expressions and body language. You would not understand the words, but how I would say my words would show stress or not stress. And how I would look as far as am I showing contempt, am I showing comfort, discomfort, is going to be able to help you. And that's the same way our communication with my friend Doug is that we didn't have the words. He couldn't hear them. but we had all those other things that we could communicate with. And I think that's what your life's work has kind of been, is trying to understand that.
Yeah. So do you think that it made you maybe even hyper alert to all those other things because you learned sign language and learn how to communicate
Yes.
with him?
Yeah, absolutely. And if you see like really high level interpreters, sign language interpreters, they're not just up there doing this, right? I mean, if you ever want to Google something, just or YouTube something, Google like hip hop or rap video sign language.
Yeah, they
And
do
they'll be
everything.
signing,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, and their facial expression and they're moving because it's boring if you're just giving me words. I'll give you another example. So when we would communicate, and this was probably up till 15 years ago, once smartphones came out, it was an epiphany for Doug in that he had emojis now.
Yeah.
He could say LOL, he could say JK, he could do all these things. Emojis for him were life-changing, right? They breathed the life into the words that he had. But the interesting part is, so I would call him, or he would call me, either way. I would go through an operator service that would call his phone that he'd have to put on a little device, a TTY device. And he had a keyboard with no emojis at the time, but just a keyboard. And he had a little green screen, and he would have to type these words in. Doot, 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 doot. And those words would go to the operator, and then the operator would see the words and try to put together the context of those words and would put emotion behind those words. So you can imagine 2 18-year-old little boys talking back about each other, and the intermediary, that's basically like the telegraph operator of old, is now speaking to me, laughing and crying or yelling because Doug's pissed off that he had to go into work and he's tired, right? Whatever it is.
Yeah.
So I would still get the benefit of, the lyrics and the soundtrack. And he only got the lyrics because he could never get that back. Now, I will say he was always been the best human being I've ever met at deciphering hidden emotion, at deciphering what's going on underneath the iceberg in a conversation, because he had to, right? That's how he thrived. You lose one sense, all the others get so much better. But he's returned back to the mean now because now he's got emojis. And he doesn't need to look people in the eyes anymore. He can just kind of be like the rest of us. We've literally in society went from cave paintings and hieroglyphics to Shakespeare, back to cave paintings and hieroglyphics in that short period of time. So it's unfortunate.
Although now we have the issue that we can also are evolving in our emoji language. For a lot of people, younger people, thumbs up shows sarcasm, right? So then you have to relearn and understand again, just with the myths of micro expressions, for instance. So he might be in an issue as well.
Yeah, so like it's kind of like my wife. We've been married for 26 years, and if I speak to her, and she says, I'm fine, I can decipher, how did she say I'm fine? I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine.
Yeah.
That'll decide how I follow up. Whereas if I just get a text that says I'm fine with no emoji, that doesn't help me.
No.
All right. I need something to go on. So I've never sent an emoji in my life, and I won't do it. And the reason being is because I believe in this thing of actually talking to people, right? It's amazing. And it's always scary with you or, Mr. Navarro, or a lot of times with Dr. Abby Moreno, is when they speak with you on Zoom. And you always feel like, God dang, I just touched my nose. I just crossed my arms. I just did this, right?
I'm crossing my arms right now. So
yeah, you're uncomfortable, right? Yeah. Is that, that's always, but that's how good communication is, because I can see in real time. And if what I just said to you didn't make sense, because you're going to give me that little micro/macro expression of misunderstanding, or I'm going to get that agreement from you where I'm like, okay, I'm on the right pace.
Yeah.
And this happens in crowds when I'm presenting, but it also more importantly happens in an interrogation, in an interview, where as I'm talking to you, I see you're tracking, or, you're going from this to this. Oh, shoot, she's not understanding. Or worse yet, she's showing disinterest, right? So that's where the beauty of having that. If we're on the phone or we're on text, I can't see that, right? Yeah. So that's why I like to have this type of communication, is because we can communicate better. We truly can.
Yeah. And it can be a handicap as well. Now in the Netherlands, we see a lot of people who are in their 20s, for instance, who really are scared to pick up phones just because they have to interact, not via computer or your WhatsApp or etc. While other people, maybe it's a judgment from our generation that we say, well, they lack communication, but maybe they need more. And maybe what we do and what we teach in is even more important now with those people in their 20s, because they need to communicate about what they need in the interaction. Yeah. And not being scared. Just say so if you want to be on Zoom or a face call or whatever.
Yeah, and I think with the advent of AI too, you're going to see how important true, authentic communication is because so many people now can just go on the ChatGPT or the Grok or whatever, and they can just say, hey, here's a text, asynchronous communication that I've got. How should I respond to this text? So they're being spoon-fed how they should communicate. And when they come into the real world, that you don't have that ability. So I do see AI being a significant problem moving forward, is that we're going to be spoon-fed how to react and how to respond. Like I said, this asynchronous type of communication gets people in trouble. We can't communicate that way wholly. We got to be able to talk in real time, because I know for the Secret Service, that's one of the things that's always so important to us, is you got to be able to get on the radio and in real time be able to communicate. And what Congress found after the assassination attempt against, candidate Trump at the time, was that one of the problems was this stovepiped kind of asynchronous communication between the local and the federal agencies, is that there was some text strings going on instead of somebody just getting on the radio and making a phone call and saying, hey, here's what we see. Something's not right here. And a lot of that might just be because that's what we're so used to now. We're so used to just texting versus talking to human beings.
Yeah. So the work is not done yet, Brad.
The work is not done, but you're going to...
Conclusion number one for this conversation.
Yes, absolutely.
And I was also thinking about my own interviews at the probation service. And I was wondering, because you talked about sign language as well, were you ever in interviews where you needed a sign language expert next to the one you needed to interview?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And there was one of the most egregious sex offenders I ever spoke with was deaf. And this is where, when you get into first impressions and you talk about horns and halos and how we assign threatening nature to people, this subject got access to kids because he was deaf, and he's a little chubby. He just looked he didn't look threatening. And he got access because he was in the church. So the church was the camouflage for him that gave him access and gave him the provenance to be able to be with these kids. And people thought, oh, he's deaf. He's such a nice guy, so on and so forth. And there was an accusation that was made, and my relationship with Doug, knowing sign language, and when I say knowing sign language, I can't take this conversation and do it in real time, but having taken a couple classes, it was so amazing how I was able to connect with him, meaning it was almost as if we were in a foreign land and I could speak English, and that's one thing when we're in America. Americans, we're very arrogant, and we tend to not have a lot of languages. No. I come to Europe and you can speak eight languages, right? Whereas, so if I'm an American and I'm traveling and I'm in Burkina Faso in Africa and nobody speaks English, and all of a sudden somebody speaks English, they're my best friend. Right? You have that shared connection. You'd be somewhat similar to if you have somebody with an Ajax football jersey in Amsterdam. Who cares? Yeah. You go to London. Hey, what's up? Yeah. How's it going? You watching the game Saturday? You see an Ajax fan in Dallas, Texas. You're best friends. And that's what kind of this was, is we had that huge connection of communication. And as I started signing to him, you just saw his eyes light up. Yeah. And for legal purposes, I brought a certified interpreter in, and I said, would you be willing to just be over my shoulder? And if he doesn't understand me, I'm going to ask him to look for you for that. And thankfully, not one time did he not understand me. And sadly, he admitted to molesting over 25 kids in this church congregation. But that connection I had with the understanding of the sign language, and I'm here to help, and, being able to sign his name and talk about how I wanted to help him and rationalize, minimize, and project, that was so helpful because of that shared experience. Mm-hmm. That was one of the rare times. I'd use it in protection sometimes when we're working an event and somebody was deaf and I could come in and try to assist. But that was one of the only times I did it in the polygraph realm, and it just so happened he had to be just an absolute monster. Yeah.
Yeah, I do remember because we talked about that earlier and also read it in your book, is that I had this suspect offender of child molestation as well at the probation service, and I had to write to court about where the behavior possibly came from, if he did it, and if so, what would be the best way if he gets punished afterwards, how to resocialize him. But I had two issues. He was deaf and he was from the Middle East, living in the Netherlands. So having a conversation with that guy was almost impossible. So we tried. I had a sign language expert also talking in his language, but then I had the issue because I know we're going to talk about nonverbals and stress, etc. But I was trying to understand him, to show empathy, for instance, as well. But the sign language expert had very much difficulties to be neutral in the face, but also in the signs she showed. So when we talked about the sexual offense, which he actually said he did, every time he didn't want to ask or was deflecting the answer, she started to do even more vigorous signs as well. And then he just closed down because he knew she was showing emotions by her sign language. So what is your experience with that?
Yeah, so the analogy I like to give is well, first off, let me address that specific issue. So that specific issue, you had a couple things working against you. There can be cultural issues there.
Yeah.
What assimilation did that individual make coming to Amsterdam, are they keeping their home country's values? And sometimes home country's values culturally, I maybe don't respect a female in that situation. Right? And that may not have been the case. You see, a lot of times we thought that, like in the global war on terror, if we were interrogating someone, we thought, oh, they're not going to respect a female. You had individuals like Lena Sisko, who was a naval, an intelligence operative down at Guantanamo Bay. She got lots of confessions from individuals. So I think it's, but that can be somewhat of handicapping, is the fact that you had two females in the room. And sometimes we're not the right person in each particular situation. For instance, if I'm working a traumatic brain injury case on a female and maybe she's got a history of domestic violence, I don't know if the male hurt the kid or if she hurt the kid. Should I be the primary person in that interview if I maybe somewhat look like her spouse? I could be the embodiment of somebody that's abusing her on a daily basis. It's a very big symptomatic potentially. So sometimes, we have to deal with what we have, and sometimes that can be an issue. But what I will say in speaking to, what you talked about as far as the interpreter showing emotion is, in the Catholic faith, I want you to visualize the confessional. And what is it about a confessional in the Catholic faith that allows people to come in and feel comfortable disclosing information? If they came in and it was a fish box and, it was wide open like an aquarium and everybody could see who was in there, people would be less willing to talk. If they came in there and the priest, after they heard something, a disclosure that was an embarrassing nature, if the priest was like, really?
Yeah.
Are you serious? That judgment. Or if the priest, a lot of priests are taught to almost, nobody confesses with a yell, they confess with a whisper.
Yeah.
So if the priest says, oh, okay, I understand, that's great. But if the priest was like, are you kidding me? So we have these fancy microphones in front of us now. If there was a microphone in the confessional, that would be a problem.
Yeah.
Okay. So privacy and those types of things and lack of contempt, in that I always teach my students, almost imagine you got duct tape on your forehead.
Yeah.
You got that neutral, soft eyes, right? I'm just listening. And I know, just like the facial expression you got right now, you're not in total agreement, but you're not in disagreement. You just have that nice vanilla look of like, tell me more, right? And that's what your sign language interpreter was not doing by showing those animated motions with the contempt. It was putting out that I'm not in a safe place.
Yeah.
And when people don't feel like they're in a trusted, safe place, once again, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the base of that level is you have to feel safe. Friendship is much higher than that. Too many times we try to be someone's friend, but we're not letting people feel safe, trusted, all those things down here. We got to get that first before we can get higher up the hierarchy.
Yeah, I learned a lot from that. Also, preparing much better when you are in such a situation. No matter if it's sign language or just another language, you have to prepare to the dot, if you will.
Yes.
And also on the emotional level, right? We are going to do this kind of interview. Well,
Yes.
I learned a lot from that. Unfortunately, that was not in the help of that suspect, but still, yeah.
Yeah, and the other hard part there, Anne, is, and this is with translation tests on Polygraph or just translation interviews in general, is that if that's their if the interpreter is truly speaking their language, like some people will say, I need an interpreter, but they understand exactly what you say, but they're hiding behind the fact of they need an interpreter. But it sounds like here they truly needed the interpreter. If that's the case, they're not seeing you. They're watching that other person.
Yeah.
So you can try all you want. You know the case. You know what you're trying to ask, how you're trying to ask it.
Yeah.
But this interpreter doesn't have that. So basically what that shows is after 9/11, we had a dearth or a lack of people that spoke certain languages.
Mm-hmm.
And so we would a lot of times have to, Farsi, Urdu, Arabic, where we would have a problem where if we were trying to obtain intelligence or just speak with locals or whatever the case may be, we had to always go through an interpreter. And you're always losing something in translation, and you're not able to deliver your message the way you want to deliver it. Just like me and Doug, there was an intermediary, and there's going to be something lost there. Yeah. So in a perfect world, you have someone that speaks that actual language that's actually the primary interviewer.
Yeah, for sure. Super interesting, and we dove in quite quickly as well, but also because I'm also talking a lot about the nonverbals. I'm talking a lot about who the person is behind the interviews as well. And also considering what we are going to talk about is interesting. I always want to know, who is Brad personally? Who are you? How would you describe yourself? And what would be your interaction style for people to understand who is the interviewer?
Wow, that's a great question. I mean, I would say, obviously you're shaped by your parents, and my parents were public service, giving everything for not a lot of payback, but doing it because it was the right thing to do and leading by example. So I was blessed to have that. And, as anybody is, you have that, what are the other shaping principles in your life, right? I like to describe it as, and this is when I talk to bad guys sometimes, is everybody has their, and I don't know if you have this in you're part of your neck of the woods, but when we grew up, we had these stories where you can choose your own adventure. And you're reading the story, and we get to page 50 and there's a dragon, and we can fight the dragon or we can run from the dragon. And then if you run from the dragon, you go to this page. And so do you have those where you're at in Europe?
I do not remember. No, I do not remember.
So it's basically choose your own adventure book. And I'm a big believer that we all have that, right? If you're talking to a bad guy, some bad things that happened to you created certain trajectories or whatever the case may be that led you to where we are today. But you can be the individual that chooses where you go next. For me, my choose my own adventure was, I was blessed because I had great people around me. I had great role models around me. I had great mentors around me that could show me, do this, don't do that. And so that kind of shaped my career. And I was blessed. I always got great advice from people. And that's what I always suggest to people is, have 3 people that you really trust and bounce ideas off them. Too many people are so arrogant that they don't do those things. So for me, as far as, who I am, I've been shaped by the people that are around me. And thankfully, you pick those good friends that when you get too high, they can bring you down. Exactly. And when you're too low, right, they can bring you up. But as far as, on my job, I've had to speak to a lot of really, really bad people. And for me, what I like to do to deal with that, and I know I may be jumping ahead here if this is a topic that you want to discuss, is the mental health of that and the mental scarring that you get from those interactions. Is for me, what I love to do in my free time is do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I love to work out. I love to run. I love to do these things that in that moment, I have to be totally invested in it. And all that other bad stuff that I talked to that bad guy about earlier in the day, I can just forget. I can just, let go away. Those are some of the things I like to do, but I've been blessed to have a wonderful woman in my life for 26 years that, like I said, when I'm too high, she brings me down, or when I'm too low, but she's sacrificed so much to allow me to be where I'm at. Blessed to have 2 wonderful children. One that's, getting ready to join the United States Marine Corps, goes to a military academy here, in the United States, and a beautiful daughter that has one of the greatest interrogation videos of all time. I kind of incorporated her into my training, and she does the infamous Cookie Monster interrogations. Maybe we can upload it to the podcast because it's beautiful. She was 8 and wanted to learn how to do interrogation, and so life is life.
Yeah. You talked about your son going to the Marine Corps, and there was this specifier, Brad. Did you notice it yourself?
Yeah, I did. Man, you catch me all the time. It's obviously one of those things where, you're like, man, I don't know if he should do that,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Like I'm blocking, I'm doing a little, I shouldn't say
Yeah.
this, but obviously you're proud of your kids and what they choose to do. And
Yeah.
it's one of those things where he wants to go see the world and he wants to serve his country, and good for him.
Yeah, I can imagine that you are worried because you can see far ahead what he can encounter, right? So, yeah,
Yes.
but giving them the space is the best a
Yeah.
father I can do, I guess. Yeah.
Yep. Support them. You provide them the information, but at a certain point, they're an adult and they're going to do what they need to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
good
And
catch. Good catch.
yeah,
Good catch,
sorry. Yeah.
Anne.
And then now I'm pacifying myself, right? And getting to the next topic. It's always fun to talk with colleagues because we can make jokes about it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I'm just going to keep my arms. I'm going to keep my arms crossed the rest
Yeah,
of the day. I'm going to lock them in.
exactly. Yeah, and I recognize finding the right people. I always say I always find people who are better than me, not so much because of the fact, but that they can show a mirror, if you will, that they
Mm-hmm.
can give a lot of feedback, which is not in your own halo, for instance, or in your own bubble.
Yeah.
And it can help you grow much easier because you don't have to think of it by yourself, reflect in your own bubble,
Yeah.
etc. So I do recognize
Well,
this.
that's interesting you bring that up, because I know I started talking about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. When we're training that, we want somebody that's better than us, somebody that's about the same level as us, and somebody that's not quite at the same level of us. Reason being is I want to learn. I want to maybe apply the things that I've learned on somebody that I can apply it on. And then I want somebody where I can test it. Okay. So very similar to what you kind of brought up, but also everybody's in their own echo chamber right now. Our search, engine algorithms and our Facebook, it's all keeping us within this little tribalism. And too often that leads to confirmation bias. And especially in investigations, that's a problem, is that if every detective in the room thinks that bad guy did it, are they going to look for any other options other than that guy did it? So it's really good. And that's one of the things that I think your peace model and some of the other European systems have, is that they have that kind of outside looking in approach sometimes, where they reassess how things are and maybe challenge those previous thought processes, so to speak, versus sometimes when we make mistakes in American law enforcement, we're in that echo chamber, we're in that bubble, and we just keep looking for things that, confirm our previous beliefs.
Yeah. And it can also help you to reflect the other way, because indeed, like you have read in pieces of my book already, I come from a different background, which was tough as well. And I know that partly I became good at my work because I always needed to think about scenarios. Also needing to understand, for instance, my parents, and my mother was in psychosis a lot, understanding where it comes from, and that she's not bad or wrong or whatever, but that she is in a stage which you need to understand to build scenarios. And this is what I actually understand now, that this made me good in my work, because I am able to always understand where people come from and also build scenarios about the possible risks of that. And this is something you can use in your interviews quite well, because your questions are more open, more interested. Yeah, so I was wondering what your reflection on that would be, based on
Yeah.
also your own experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. Is that I never, I don't want to place judgment on the sinner. I want to talk about the sin. I don't want to judge the person, and that's what's sometimes hard, is because so many times people hear the word pedophile, or they hear the word murderer, and they're so charged. And I will try to get so emotionally invested in that person, meaning tactical curiosity, where I want to be so curious about their family, their education, their employment, and especially their leisure activities, that I'm learning something about this person, that they're teaching me something. And when people are teaching you something, and you're not in this interrogatory of, tell me about this, what was this? When they're teaching you something, it could be they're teaching you how to moonshine alcohol, how to, I've literally spent time with people, hey, how do you make crack cocaine? And it doesn't matter, whatever it is, they want to teach you. And when people teach you things, we get past that critter brain. It's almost like a false statement. When you make a false statement, people want to correct it, right? It's not that question. And then you ask those follow-up questions, people want to tell you more. And before you know it, you've had screen time with them, because one of the great abilities to collect information is to get the most amount of curated screen time with them. Just like I'm trying to create a Facebook reel or Instagram reel metaphorically with that person that's curated based upon what I know about them before and what I learn about them now. So now I'm giving them that dopamine hit. And they're giving me, they're not hitting that cortisol trigger, because they're talking about something that they like, and they're teaching me. And by doing that, they're associating me with that trust. They don't view me as a threat. And then I can circle back to what I'm trying to get to. So to go to understanding, you bring that up, that's one of the main principles that I deal with, and it's rationalization.
Yeah.
And it's understanding does not mean acceptance of the bad behavior. It means, John, I understand why you felt like you must have done this, or you needed to do this because you were hurting for money. John, I understand why you felt you must have done this because of what happened to you when you were the same age. So I'm not saying that the behavior was good, but I'm providing John, in this case, the golden bridge, okay, to hopefully be able to feel comfortable in a safe space to provide me this information.
Yeah.
Because you did it, no, I didn't. You did it, no, I didn't, is not going to work.
No.
It's people talk when they feel trusted and heard, and that's what understanding comes from. Is I'm not here to judge you. Okay, I feel I feel you're in a safe place, and providing that space for someone to feel as if they can make a disclosure to you.
Yeah. That reminds me, I'm seeing this image of this probation client of mine who was from Greece, and he lived in the Netherlands for quite some time. And we got into the discussion about if oregano was Italian or Greek. And he was
That's beautiful.
And furious about, no, it's not Italian, it's actually Greek. And he started to explain. And then we started to have this conversation about food, which I know you do as well, having food in the room, but also talking about food, building that rapport. But it was like someone who was trying to give me his best recipe of this salad, his Greek salad.
Absolutely.
So then, because he wasn't able to talk yet, then I made his recipe at home. And I brought it with me the next week. He came in. And I was like, okay, you need to test this for me. Is this okay? And then he started to talk. He started to tell about his father who gave him this recipe. And it's not there yet. You need to put in more this or that. And then he started to talk about the relationship with his father and what his father did to him, and that he got into a loyalty conflict, etc. And then the reasons why he became aggressive in other situations. So like you say, sometimes it just needs time, and there is a way, even if you don't find the way, maybe just starting at what you have now, the information you have now. I really learned a lot from that as well.
Absolutely. When I was in graduate school, I worked and it was great. It was a great opportunity for me because, you study criminology and why people do certain things, but it's in a textbook, right? So I put in for this job, and it was down at the local jail of a major city, a very crime-ridden city. And I got to speak with thousands of people that were arrested for all crimes imaginable. And my ultimate goal was to collect urine from them and ask them questions about drugs, gangs, and crime. And it was all anonymous. But you can imagine, like, why would you want to talk to me? So it was a master class to me, not by anything I did. It was what I learned on influence principles and just listening, where I would have the CO, the correctional officer, would prime everybody and say, hey, guys, I know you're only going to get a bologna sandwich today. These guys are just collecting research. They're good guys. They're good gals. They're doing this research process. It's to help people. Oh, and by the way, they'll give you a Snickers bar and a Mountain Dew if you participate. And so they're building us up, right? They're priming the environment so that when I make the ask, I'm coming off, I already got that metaphorical halo on my head. But when I would start talking to them, these are people that I have absolutely nothing in common with. And they're judging me, and I don't want to judge them back, just asking them information about their life and so on and so forth. But it's amazing what I learned in those thousands of interviews regarding not just criminal activity, but how do you make a perfect pasta sauce, right? How do you do this? How do you do that? And all that information, yes, it's helping you in that moment, But how many other times over the last 30 years have I used that information because now I have that encyclopedia of first world knowledge from these people.
Yeah.
And it's just, to me, that was really eye-opening on when you talk about people's family. Hey, how's everybody doing? It's very transactional usually. It's almost like you feel like you have to ask it. People can't choose their families other than who they marry, roughly. I mean, you can't choose how you're born into, what situation you're born into. Your employment, a lot of times, is location specific. Maybe not as much anymore, where if you grew up in a mill town 100 years ago, you'd work in the mill. But there's still some geographic, hindrances on what you can do employment-wise. But when it comes to leisure activities, that's where I really spend my time on, because what somebody chooses to do in their free time is where they choose to spend their hours of free time shows where their values lie. That's what their tribe is. Mm-hmm. So if I spend time talking to you and you say, hey, I took this Krav Maga class and it was great. And I'm like, I took 4 or 5 years of Krav Maga. What was your favorite part about it? Talk to me about that. And now we got that connection. Or let's say I've never taken Krav Maga, but I've taken, I ask you, what is it about Krav Maga that you like so much? What would you say?
I would like to say that it's built on working with your own limbic system, just a reaction, and that you don't have to work on repeating things or remembering things, but that you can work with what you already do based on your limbic system, etc. So It feels very natural.
And how does it make you feel after a training session?
More self-secure, because I know that I can already participate in situation or act in situation because it's there already. So it made me more self-secure.
Perfect. So even though, let's just say, if I knew nothing about Krav Maga, that information now, what do I have a link point? I feel the same way when I do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So now we can talk. We've linked something, 2 independent things together, because we asked that follow-up question.
Yeah.
We said, Anne, what is it about it? Tell me about it. How is that? Is that Israeli self-defense thing? Like, I know what it is, but if I just throw it out there like that, you're going to correct me and you're going to inform me. And now you're not thinking about the next question I'm going to ask you.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're going into a safer place. And then we talked about that for 5 minutes, and then I'll circle back with maybe a question that I actually want to know.
And did those kind of techniques, if you ever felt too instrumental to you, that you feel that you are influencing something or maybe manipulating because you do it often or even a lot?
Yeah, so I don't necessarily view it as manipulating when I'm talking to a criminal, right? I view it as a tool in the toolbox. Where it becomes manipulative, it's almost like the old saying, a hammer can be used to build things and it can be used to break things down, right? It's got dual purpose. It's same thing with influence. Negative influence done negatively for the wrong purposes or self-gain, yeah, that can be an issue. If I'm doing that in my personal life to affect my relationship with my wife or my kids, or that's a problem. If I'm doing it in the work to try to get a promotion or try to work against somebody else's promotion, that's a problem. That's when you need to look in the mirror. But if my polygraph result or my investigation shows that the person in front of me has done that bad thing, and I'm doing everything legally and I'm doing everything ethically, if I'm using certain aspects of influence to nudge that person to be able to come up with the own self-acceptance that they did that thing and they want to tell me why they did that thing, I can sleep well at night. But that's a great question, because there's always that debate going, hey, are you taking advantage? And my thing is, well, that person took advantage of someone. That person killed someone. They raped someone. Mm-hmm. What was their moral code when they chose to do those things, right? So using some of Cialdini's principles, or, breaking bread with somebody because I think that may ingratiate them to me, or how my vocal inflection is, I'm sure there's other things we'll talk about, but using any of those things to be able to provide an outcome that is favorable. And when I say favorable outcome, if I set things up to create the right environment where a truthful person can be truthful to me, and where if they choose not to be truthful with me because they're deceptive, then I've also created an environment where I can obtain that information. I think I'm being fair because I'm playing to both sides. Yeah. It's when I'm going to treat everyone as if they're guilty, and I'm going to do all this with the sole goal of eliciting a confession. What happens if they're truthful? Yeah. Your goal should be put a blinder on, an unbiased seeker of the truth, and I'm going to obtain the truth. Yeah. So whatever we do, if we start from, I'm going to obtain the truth, that is the base of any model of interviewing that you should be at. Anybody that says different, that's a problem. They're selling you something. So obtain the truth. Now, what I do in order to obtain the truth, there's going to be a time where we've made a determination that this person has done that bad thing. At that point, when I do some legally, scientifically backed influence principles to try to obtain that information, like understanding, like rationalizing, like diminishing the impact of their actions, as long as I am not breaking the law, as long as I am not, making them promises, guarantees, there are things that lead to false confessions. As long as I'm not doing those things, I can sleep well at night. Yeah.
Yeah, and that also reminds me of my time at the Dutch service as well, because there is a lot of discussion. Because if you are operational and you want to talk to a source, for instance, to gather information to be able to use it, then people say you are using your manipulation skills. And then teaching operational workers, I also talked about, but you can still be transparent, although you cannot say everything. For instance, just talk with someone why you need the information, and it's not about modus operandi or whatever, but it's telling them, I need this information for you because my goal is to keep the Dutch democracy safe, to keep the Netherlands safe.
Right.
And you can choose to work with me, yes or no, but that means that I will ask you things that you have to consider or that can maybe dangerous, yes or no. So in that way you are still transparent, but if you don't show your motives, then it can be seen as manipulation. And a lot of people don't understand the difference and how it actually works. And I see that in interviewing as well.
Yeah, no, there's manipulation in life every single day. People try to manipulate you every day, right? So if and I don't know how car sales work in Europe, so I claim ignorance on that. But I will say, if you want to look at manipulation and a misuse of Cialdini's principles or use of Cialdini's principles, it would be go to a car dealership in America. And things have changed a lot. There's a lot more transparent nowadays because of online and that. But the moment you walk on the lot, what's taking place? What brings you here today? They're going to find out your motivation. They're going to start chatting you up and finding common interests.
Yeah.
They're going to, hey, what can I get you to drink? Reciprocity, right? Social proof. You're going to see other people there that are buying. They may just be other salespeople. People banging a gong saying they bought the car when that's just another salesman that just came up and banged the gong. They're keeping a social proof. Authority, they're going to bring the manager out. Scarcity, we've only got one left on the lot. Act now while supplies last, right? It's the end of the month. This deal's over today. Is it really? They're going to ask questions like, what's your budget and monthly? 150 euros a month. Why did they ask that question? Because they want you to think short term instead of long term. 450 versus 45,000, right? So then they're going to be like, Anne, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that. I'll go talk to my manager. I mean, I'll do everything I can. I tell you what, if I could somehow do that, Anne, would you be willing to make a purchase today? Now, you already know he's not going to get, or she's not going to get it for $450 a month. So you're like, yeah, sure. Commitment, right? You might even put your initials. Yeah, for 400, boom. And the next thing you know, now they're looking at the trade-in. They're doing this, they're doing that. They're using Unity to, we're in this together. And then you take the test drive, and then now you're back at the finance table. And before you know it, you're walking away with a new car that you probably regret, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if that's happened to you or if that's something that takes place.
No, it was not a car, but I remember a friend of mine once asked me to find a couch for him. And then we went to this couch sofa kind of store, and we actually flipped things around because we actually foreseed all the tricks. And then we are like, how can we flip the coin actually?
Right.
So he did all those tricks. Can I do this? I have to talk to the boss. So he went to his manager and talked with them. And then we were like, okay, how long can we let him consider another price or fee or whatever? And we just sat there. What to do?
Right. You ceded control back in that situation.
Yeah.
You turned the tables.
Exactly. So this also makes me wondering about what you can do as an interviewer, or did you have experiences where you felt that someone was flipping the influencing coin?
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna run against people that are fellow police officers. You're gonna run against people that were in special forces and went to certain classes where they were taught not to do certain things. And you're going to see that. And the key, and before I delve into that, the key to manipulation is just to not engage in it, right? Like when you sense that it's being used against you, you have to understand what's allowing them to do this, and it's access. If it's an online scheme, it's access. It's the email, it's whatever, it's the access. So time constraints and access. Buy yourself some time and shut off the access. Meaning, if you go to buy a car, the best way to buy a car is to shop around and to do everything online. You should walk in one time, and that is to actually sign and get your keys. If you don't go in, they can't use reciprocity. They can't use social proof. They can't use consistency commitment because it's all on your terms, kind of like what you did with the couch. When it comes to child sexual assault, parents out there, the number one thing that allows someone to groom a kid is access.
Yeah.
If they don't have access to the kid, nowadays it's hard because of online, they can't use all those principles, okay? Because they don't have access. They give access to, like, I'm never going to let my daughter have a sleepover. Just never going to happen because that eliminates access.
Yeah.
So when it comes to that, and I apologize, I went off on a little rabbit hole there, but when it comes to manipulation, eliminate the access and always buy yourself as much time as possible.
Yeah.
When you make a rush decision where they've had the ability to make you feel like you need to do something, hit the pause button and be like, why am I feeling this way? Well, why am I feeling this way? And usually you're going to be like, man, they almost got me.
Yeah.
Okay, I will tell you, we think we're smart. We think, in that situation, you had a friend that helped you. But I will tell you this, I have been in situations where I've made those poor decisions because the things that I teach were used against me. And I thought, that's never going to happen. But access and time restraints are what got me.
Yeah.
So I would say definitely avoid that. Now, if you have someone doing that to you in an interpersonal situation where I have to get this information, I'm going to call a spade. I'm going to point those out and I'm going to say, look, you're gaslighting me, you're this, you're that, whatever. Yeah. I see that. I'm not going to do that to you. So let's just shoot each other straight when it comes to this. I think you call it out if you have to engage.
Yeah. Those are also great learnings, not just for interviewers, but everyone who is watching this episode as well. In your personal interactions, those are very important learnings. And for instance, engaging with what people say, but not going into the content. Sometimes I just say, just don't do this. It doesn't work with me. And then they sometimes said, I'm not doing anything. And then just be quiet, right? Because they feel, they sense they cannot do this to you as well.
Yeah. Well, and, let's be honest, sometimes we do it so often we forget we're doing it. They may honestly, they may be doing this, let's say it's in sales, they may do it 10 times a day. So it's just, that's just what they do. And so when you call them on it, they're like, oh, I'm not doing that. Then actually I am. My bad. They realize it after a point. But no, that's a good way to do it, is not get into the specifics. Because anytime we call out the specifics, whether it be a delay in an answer or whether it be a furrowed brow or whatever, when you call out the specific, they're not going to do that specific thing again. You're giving biofeedback that is going to hurt your analysis moving forward. So like you said, keep it vague, and then you may see that specific behavior again.
Yeah. So let's talk about analysis and measuring, because you are also a polygraph examiner and people are very interested in that because there's a lot of controversial discussion about it.
Sure.
So you just told me, and I asked already, you have one at the back, right? You have a few...
Yeah, I just have the components. So I kind of moved aside there. You can see
walk us through how does it work?
Yeah, so you can see the pneumograph tubes there. Those will go around your upper chest and your upper abdomen. The blood pressure cuff, obviously just like a blood pressure cuff, and then the bulb to blow it up. And then you also see the stainless steel finger plates. And those are just going to go on the tips of your two fingers, and those are going to monitor and record sweat gland activity. So basically I'm looking at breathing, heart rate, and blood volume, and sweat gland activity. And the thing about polygraph, and I'm sure you'll have some follow-up questions about it, is it perfect? Absolutely not. Should it be used in court? Probably not. And the reason being is because it's one of those things where you have different levels of training. You have some schools that are very, very good, some maybe not as much. You have some schools that may screen out who can go to the school and others that don't. The federal school screens out who can come there. It's 12, 14 weeks long. It has a dedicated internship afterwards. They are only testing at specific people at the right time, at the right place, in the right situation. And there are a lot of safeguards, guardrails, so to speak, to make sure that you're running certain types of tests. Okay. When you watch and when people think polygraph is like Jerry Springer and a reality TV show, who's the father? Did you have relations with this person? That's not polygraph. That's a show. That's that's not polygraph. But I'll give you, for instance, we'll go back in history and say what's good polygraph. So Frank Seckler was the Secret Service agent in 1939, and he was the first federal polygraph examiner, and he trained under John REID. I'm sure we'll talk REID later. Is that very famous and by some people infamous, trainer of polygraph not only polygraph but interview techniques. And in 1939, this individual, Frank Seckler, he was from New York. He goes to the polygraph school. It was much more, it was a very abbreviated class at that point. And he gets his box, and this is the old paper and the ink where you see the squiggles, not the modern day polygraph that you see today. Is when he gets back to New York, they're working a counterfeit investigation where this counterfeiter is literally, it's almost like the French Connection, the movie, where this guy is jumping on the L and the elevated train, and he's getting in a cab, and he's running, and he's doing all this. And the surveillance team is following him, and they see him go into this tenement building that is 8 stories high, and then it has 8 rooms on each floor. So there's 64 potential possibilities. Well, we're not going to be able to kick in all the doors. So when the subject comes out, they catch him with the counterfeit, and they ask him, where'd you get it from? And this is pre-Miranda rights in the United States. And he's like, nope, I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about, right? So they have this fancy new tool, this polygraph exam, and they're like, you know what, let's try this thing out. So they do what's, even in the scientific community, very accepted methodology of what's called a guilty knowledge test. And they ask him, was it on floor 1, floor 2, all the way up to floor 8? And he responded. We asked him that question 6 times, and he responded all 6 times on room 4. Okay. Well, was it in room A, B, all the way up, right? Wow, he responded 6 times on room D. Let's go knock on the door, room 4D.
Yeah.
Guess what was in 4D? The counterfeit plant. Can you imagine, 1939, this new technology, what people must have thought they had at that moment in life?
The Holy Grail.
We have the Holy Grail, right? It can read minds. The problem is that over the years, we've asked polygraph to do too many things in too many situations. And it does that. It waters it down, and it makes it, in the eyes of many, to be problematic. It's similar to, like an MRI or a mammogram. Let's say a mammogram is 88% effective. Would we say that we shouldn't use a mammogram for the early screening of breast cancer? My wife, she had an inconclusive mammogram. So what do? They go do another test, and they find out she has breast cancer. And she's able to get chemotherapy early on so she can live. It's a tool, right? It's almost like if you put a smoke detector in a kitchen, is it going to go off falsely sometimes because maybe you're trying to cook that dish for a probationer and you burned the sausage, right? Or the toast? Yeah, it's probably going to get a lot of misreads. But if I take that smoke detector and I put it in an upstairs bedroom, and it only responds at anything over 500 degrees. And I get the proponents of polygraph, it's witch science, it's this, and this, and I can beat it, whatever. And then I say, okay, well, wouldn't you want to know if it's 500 degrees in an upstairs bedroom? It may not determine fire, stress, but it determined a specific stress point at a specific time. We don't measure generalized nervous tension.
Yeah.
I will calm you down. I will account for that. I will baseline that. I'm looking for multiple peaks at multiple times at multiple situations. So that's what I would say first about polygraph to try to hopefully, explain it to the masses, I guess.
Yeah. And because there is, it's also being sold as the lie detection tool. Do you know where that ever came from, calling it a lie detector?
Well, I mean, usually, if somebody fails that test, whatever you're testing them on, what's the first thing you say to them?
You might be lying.
You're lying to me, right? So I'm sure that's the association to it. But yeah, it's a physiological tool that I look at internal. So imagine this with body language. What do you say body language is? It's the outward expression of what?
Stress. Comfort.
Okay, of an internal. Yeah, so it's the outward expression of an internal response or an internal mechanism that's going on.
Yeah.
All polygraph is I'm going just a little bit in front of that process. Okay, I'm seeing the same things going on inside of someone's body that's causing them to move their body language to soothe things. What I'm looking at is when the body's trying to suppress and throw a wet blanket on those reactions. It's not comfortable to lie, right? That's why you see self-soothing behaviors. Just like body language can't determine deception, it can determine stress. It's the same thing with polygraph. I can determine stress.
Yeah.
So if I ask specific questions at specific times and I see those specific reactions consistently over time, now my ability to detect deception becomes much, much higher, because as we know through the work of Paul Ekman, when he looked at 20,000 people's ability to detect deception without any tools, we're 54% effective.
Yeah.
So we're not very good at this. Where if I can get polygraph to in the mid 80s, and I'm not saying it is or it isn't, wouldn't I want to have that tool? Maybe to not condemn you to life in prison? Absolutely not. It shouldn't be used in that regard. But to help shape my investigation, 100%.
And here I like to call it, when I teach steering information, it steers you into a certain direction. So that's how I like to perceive it as well. And there was also a question about it, and maybe that's a little early, but it made me think about this question, because someone was curious about psychological science behind the reason why interrogators ask questions 3 times.
Oh, okay.
And I can see that it might be baselining as well.
Yeah, it could be, but it could also be you're going to be in your own mental space at one point. They're going to be in their mental space at one point. When you know you did that one bad thing, and you know you're coming to talk to the police about it or their probation officer about it, and you know you did that one bad thing, and you know what they're going to ask about it, what are you prepped to answer? Let's say, did you shoot that man?
And then
right?
you say, no. Yeah.
Yeah. You're waiting for that, right? Because, memories, the way we store memories is it's that movie reel in your head that's been recording. So the truth is the movie reel is one long strand, and you could remember the truth because it's easy, because I remember what I did early this morning till right now. When I fabricate a lie, I've got to stop the movie. I've got to cut what's there. I have to create another false scene, and I have to put it in there, and I have to tape that together, and then shoot, I left this part out. What am I going to do with it? Well, I hope they don't ask me about that. That would suck. Well, how am I going to explain? So that's the problem, and that's why when I ask that first question, they're anticipating it potentially. Whereas now I start talking hobbies, I start talking this, I get past the critter brain, I sneak past that limbic system. We're having this conversation, and then I ask something that just preceded that hot button issue, where it could be a problem. So I'll give you, for instance, let's say somebody did an armed robbery, and we think it happened at this time with this weapon, and we think he got the weapon at this location at this time, and we've got witnesses that put him at this place in this time. Okay, that's the only information we know. If I come straight out and said, and let's say that's Tom's house. If I come straight out and say, did you go to Tom's house? He can either say yes or no, but he could hear that question and be like, oh, they must have some information about Tom's house. Yeah, you know what I did? I went there and played some video games, or I had beer, or I did whatever, right? We're tipping our hand, and he can come up with some reason as why that potentially happened. Whereas if I just said, tell me what you did today, he doesn't know what I know. And he says, I played video games all day. Oh, wow. What's the next question? What video games you play? Oh, I played Call of Duty. Oh, no kidding. Do you play story mode or do you play online? Oh, dude, I only play online. Story mode's for kids, man. I play online. Oh, so you actually play with other people. How long do you think you played? Dude, I played for 8 hours. I woke up, played all day, went to bed. Man, so what'd you do? Oh, I door dashed. All right. So, man, you didn't even leave. No. Okay, so now what do I have? If I don't get anything else, I can forensically check his Xbox.
Yeah.
I can subpoena Microsoft to determine his gamer account.
Yeah.
I can subpoena DoorDash, right, to do that. So as a result, then if I hit him with that, I could be wrong on this, but I'm going through the file, almost playing like Columbo in the United States, right? Where I'm like,
just one more question.
Is there any way that you might have went over on 14th Street? Is that any way? If that's where Tom lives? Oh, you know what? Now that you think, so that's where you see where the story differs. So sometimes we will strategically ask certain questions away, either to lock them into a potential provable lie that we can counteract later, or just by the fact that their guard is up so much here that we won't touch that issue right now. We'll come back to it when their guard's lower, and they might have some leakage, either body language or linguistically later.
Yeah. For the trainees who follow my training, that might be part of the validation technique, right?
Yes.
To validate everything someone is saying, to be able to come back to it, to the facts, etc.
Yes.
Yeah. But the question was not done from this follower, because the same question worded 3 times ways throughout the interrogation, and 3 separate answers are then put towards some greater conclusion. I've always wondered if there was a protocol of science to it, like Goldilocks. Do you ask hot, cold, or tempered? And also, a lot of questions. Do you really try to hide the question inside another question as much as possible? Is it subtle psychological warfare, which I found very difficult to say, or is it being thorough? A lot of questions, but
yeah,
there is also maybe some suspiciousness behind what someone really wants to know behind this question, I guess.
Yeah, so here's the thing, is that sometimes there's schools of thought on this, and that if I'm going to give you bad news, or maybe not even bad news, but if you're here to talk about a certain thing, to lead with that, right? Because if I don't, you're always wondering, why are we here? Why are we, so some people will just lead off of this. Hey, you're here because of this, and I want to know about that. And then they'll do a little bit of rapport, and then they'll get into the questions that they want. Whereas other people will kind of shroud that. I typically like to call a spade pretty early on, even not just during an interview, but if you're also interrogating somebody. Hey, there's no doubt in my mind that you did that thing, or the investigation clearly shows, and that you stole that money.
Yeah.
I'm not going to sit here and spend 15 minutes, I think you made a mistake, because they're going to be like, what are we talking about here? Sometimes you got to rip the Band-Aid off and just say, here's my belief. However, I'm not judging you as a person. I think you made a mistake. The good part is this. I think it happened for these reasons. Let's talk about the why and not the what. To kind of answer that question as it was put, I can't get into this. I don't know that there's science on the 3 questions or whatever the case may be, but just from my own experience, I think, sometimes I am going to shroud what I'm really after. Like, they may be thinking I'm after this when I'm truly after that. I see that a lot in child sexual abuse cases, where they think I'm after a hands-on admission, okay? But I may be after, to get my foot in the door, a CSAM, child sexual abuse material admission, where they're looking at inappropriate images, and they're distributing inappropriate images, and they're manufacturing inappropriate images. I get that information. Now they're going to jail, okay? And then I can, maybe their resistance has come down, and then I will focus on talking about potential hands-on offenses, because I've got the low-hanging fruit taken care of.
Yeah. And I was thinking about what you said about, I think these might be the reasons, and you can tell me everything about it. Is that the case, yes or no? And I was wondering, is that not already a very subjective question? And how would you deal with that?
Yeah, I don't know in that situation. I'm trying to, it's an interesting question. I've never been asked that from that standpoint, is that each situation is going to be different. We are providing stimulus to the person we're talking to, right? I may be, can have emotional contagion, where I'm having a bad day, I'm tired, right? Or my contagion may be affecting their answer. So either way, neutral, I'm hopefully just providing them stimulus. What they are providing back to me, it's tough to sense that. So it's going to be different from one person who maybe needs that shrouded versus another person that's just like, dude, come on, man. What are we here talking about? You keep asking me this question a lot of different ways. Let's get down to the brass tacks here. Yeah. So some of that's going to be their personality. And I'm not one of these people that get into DISC assessments and look at personality profiles and stuff. I don't have enough time to get into that in an interaction. But I think instinctually, a lot of times we see people, are they direct? Are they indirect, right? So that may determine, am I asking multiple questions, or am I just asking at one time?
Yeah, I was thinking about it also from a coaching or therapeutic situation, where some people say, if you ask those kinds of questions, might this be the case, etc., that you are already probing a problem to someone. And I was trying to relate this, could this be the case in interviewing as well, if you ask a question like that? So this was the reason, actually.
Okay, yeah, I'm not that advanced. I wish I could say, yes, I totally see that. I would
Maybe
do
for
that too.
Abby to research that one.
Yes, yeah. We'll talk to Abby and she'll do a study on it.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, a lot of times, look, I see a lot of talking heads on TV and this, that, and the other. And I know you see it too I won't mention any specifics, but look at how this person moved here or moved there.
Yeah.
They use this word choice and that guarantee means that they had mother-father issues. And you're like, what?
Yeah.
So I wish I could say that there was some science behind asking when I do. A lot of times it's just, I may have forgot. I should have asked it. I didn't ask it again. Or you know what? I asked it once and they answered it. So I don't need to ask it again.
No. The most logical question everyone has is, how do you differentiate between psychological responses and of stress and responses when it might be indicative of stress? So how would you answer that?
Yeah, so for me, general nervous tension, is I'm going to see that typically from start to finish. And there's certain ways I can gauge that. Like, it is a significant life event if somebody is being interviewed about an accusation in a police department. It is a significant life event to be polygraphed for a job or to be polygraphed for a case that you're in, potentially looking at being involvement in. So I expect people to be nervous. And if they're not nervous, to me, that's a big issue because either they're trying to fake that they're not nervous or they've maybe medicated, they take Xanax, they've done whatever. And I'm like, man, well, something's not right here. So I expect to see the general nervous tension. Now, that general nervous tension should mediate itself over a brief period of time, right? Like after 10, 15 minutes of me asking basic questions, me mimicking and mirroring certain things that you're doing to make you feel as if you're comfortable. You've been able to use the restroom. I've provided you with water. I expect certain things to slowly dissipate. Now, I want you to think of this. What I look for is not... I'd use a reference. For our dog owners that are listening, it's kind of the analogy that I like to give is when I'm questioning someone in an open-ended forum, the dog is off the leash. They can take me wherever they want to take me with the story. I can guide it. I like, hey, come over here. I can guide it a little bit. I can provide certain prompts. But the best way linguistically I can detect deception is by putting the dog on the leash. So in the form of, if you want to, and you can construe this as polygraph too, I'm not running a polygraph on you while I'm having you tell me things about your day. I'm putting you on the leash and I'm saying, did you do that thing? And then the spotlight is going on you metaphorically. And what is happening for a 3-5 second period of time, I'm looking into your body and I'm determining, look, why is that question causing a however many-fold different increase in your body's responses over the other questions that I've asked? We've reviewed them. We've asked them. We're in a controlled environment. And I'm doing this multiple times. So I'm seeing that consistency. So I'm looking at a specific moment in time, 3 to 5 second period of time, not 30 to 50 minutes. And by doing so, after I've bled off some of that nervousness by already reviewing the questions, I'm feeling very comfortable if I see you respond this way versus this way. And I'm kind of tap dancing, if you can't tell, around how I'm kind of answering because, obviously I don't want to give any information away as far as how polygraph works or how somebody could potentially manipulate it. And that goes to the next question that a lot of your viewers probably have is, well, people can fool that thing.
Exactly. That was one of the questions.
Well, and it's fun. It's great that you say that because when I was with the Secret Service and I was in polygraph, we flew armed, on planes going to the United States because we had to have our duty weapon. And you'd always check in with the pilot and, he or she might say, hey, where are you going? And I'd tell them, they'd be like, what do you do? Oh, polygraph. They're like, oh, I heard those things don't work. They can't be used in court and you can beat them. Those are the first two questions I get. So I'm like, and I usually don't really engage it, but that is such a common question I get as far as, well, you can fool those things. You can do X, Y, and Z. And you're like, okay, that's fine. Do you think we don't know that?
Yeah.
Do you think we don't see that? Do you
it.
think we don't? Yeah. It would be like if our TSA, our Transportation Safety Administration here, our magnetometers don't work. Yeah, there's ways they can beat them. They wear this certain kind of clothing, but it's okay. You wouldn't use that tool anymore, right? So if the intelligence agencies, if the federal law enforcement agencies, if they see the value in this, we're obviously training our people in how to see it. And I wish I could go into specifics about the amount of information that we obtain from applicants. Is that what people can put down whatever they want on their application forms. And who are you going to verify it against, right? Yeah, you're going to have some records, this, that, and the other, but you're going to go talk to the neighbors. How often in your experience did the neighbors be like, oh my God, yes, you won't believe it?
No,
right?
Not often, no.
No, it's usually, he was a good kid. He kept to himself. What's that sound like? That's when they interview serial killers' neighbors, right? Like, oh yeah, he kept to himself, right?
Coming,
Yeah, I didn't see it coming. So you're not getting value there, right? So my whole suggestion to people that take polygraph is, look, if you have a job that you're taking a polygraph, put everything on your forms that's accurate. All we're doing is asking you questions about what's on your forms. And if you're honest about what's on your forms, that question is going to be like we call it here, like a San Diego weather, 78 and sunny. You're going to be like this. But if you know when you filled out those forms, you're like, oh man, I did that bad thing. And I'm going to put no here when it's actually a yes. What do you think that one thing they're going to be thinking about when I ask you about your application forms? That one thing. And that's going to become the mountain instead of the molehill. So you can try to obfuscate, you can try to contaminate, you can try to do this, that, or the other, whatever the internet says. A trained examiner is going to see it, and it's going to make you leave the process, the application process. So I get why people say it, because if you type in polygraph, you're going to probably get 5 million hits. And most of them are going to be negative, and most of them are going to probably try to sell you something. And they're going to say, you need to do X, Y, and Z in order to keep a bad thing from happening. Okay? The American Polygraph Association is not going to spend a bunch of money getting ad space and better listing on Google to say, don't do these things, right? But I'm telling you right now, don't do those things. We're going to catch you.
It's on the YouTube right now.
Yeah, we're going to catch you.
Yeah, exactly. And that also reminds me of my own screening and vetting at the AVD as well, because they still think that people tell the truth on their forms. So in the Netherlands, we still think if people fill in forms, those are facts.
Sure. Everybody that comes in through customs when they land, I have nothing to declare. I swear, right?
Exactly.
Everybody's honest.
Exactly. So in that case, that is why it's important to still have that conversation, right? And there is this joke I also make when we have the link in between vetting and also the polygraph. I would also joke to say, I don't need all those wires, because non-verbally there is the same kind of information, because you can see breath go up and down, you can see the shoulders, you can see the nostrils, like Abby also talks a lot about. You can see a lot of other comfort, discomfort movements.
Yes.
So why not? Why still use the wires?
And I'm not debating your abilities, Anne, okay? But we can't replicate your skill set. We can't. You're born with a gift, right? You caught me when I started talking about the Marines and my son, and it made me uncomfortable, right? Very few people. I'm not saying you're a wizard at this, okay? But you're very good at this. So whereas, the polygraph is going to significantly enhance even that skill set. Now, I would add into it further as far as the linguistic analysis, right? Is that, to me, delay, exclusive qualifiers, confronting the examiner, all these things are so important to add to that body language mix. So it's one of those things where I'm going to have to look at other things. And so for me, linguistically is where a lot of that leakage happens. If I ask you a question like, did you do the following? And I may go through 15 things. Did you murder anybody? Did you rape anybody? Did you rob anybody? And it's no, no, no. And then I ask you, did you commit an arson? No. Yeah, it's that instead of with where if you listen to it, you weren't watching, but you listened to it and it had an exclamation mark next to it. But then you listened to it and it had a question mark next to it. And you're like, oh, why did they have a question mark on that? And it may be very, very subtle. But I will tell you, when I do that, when somebody has a problem on the polygraph, but there's multiple issues we're looking at, usually where I've got that little highlight where they had the upward inflection is where the issue lies. That, that does work as far as a change in upward inflection. And once again, all these things, when we talk any detection of deception, there's obviously no 100%.
No.
I'm sure you've seen the books and the podcasts where people are like, oh, this is up 100% if you do this. And it's not, but If I can give you a 5% increase, a 10% increase, whatever, you go from being average to being elite. It takes minor micro adjustments in these types of things. So for me, delay is one of the big ones.
Yeah.
Is that why does the delay happen? The delay happens because truth is uncomfortable. And so the way I would want your listeners to look at detection of deception linguistically is, did you ask a yes or no question? If you did ask a yes or no question, did they answer it yes or no? And did they do so in a timely fashion? If you ask those two questions and neither one of those apply, it does not 100% mean they're lying to you, but it's a big red flag, right? Yeah. Hey, Ann, did you shoot that man? Did I shoot that man? That's a simple question. Why are you buying yourself time by re-asking the question? Ann, did you shoot that man? How dare you ask me that question?
Yeah,
you're confronting me,
yeah.
Right? When I ask you a question and it's, well, usually I don't, normally, for the most part, as I told the other officer, you're not answering the question, right? Are you inserting truthful information, sandwiching? Are you doing a truth sandwich? Are you telling me truth here, lying, and then telling me the truth? Right. The famous clip of that is Jerry Sandusky. He's asked by Bob Costas, are you a pedophile? Legalistic term. He does not view himself as a pedophile. So he's asked, are you a pedophile? And he says, no. Are you sexually attracted to young children? Am I sexually attracted to young children? Young children? No, I like spending time with young children.
That was
I like hanging around young children.
I heard that one as well.
So, yeah, it's legitimately, he hears a question, he's able to answer it truthfully. He doesn't view himself as a pedophile, but he's asked, are you sexually attracted? Yeah. Now he has a problem. Yeah. You're asked a yes or no question, so what does he do? He shortens it and buys himself time, and then he gives you two true sandwiches by saying, no, I like spending time with them. I like hanging around with them. I like mentoring them. He's trying to self-soothe and not feel the lie, but then he goes, but no. Yeah. That's one of the greatest examples for people to watch to show that. And, emotionally inconsistent. You may, and I'd be interested in your opinion on this, but there's a famous video of R. Kelly, the R&B singer here in the United States, where he's doing an interview with Gayle King, and, he's asked about, some allegations made against him, and all of a sudden he kind of says, which camera's on here? And he gets on the camera and then he starts getting crazy emotional. Yeah. It's not like, and this is the way I view emotions. And like I said, I'm honestly interested to know what you think. When you give bad news to somebody, like your child is deceased, you can expect a blow up, right? Yeah. But in most interactions, the barometer does not go from normal to screaming, hollering, or emotion. And it's not followed up with, I'm crying, and then I look to see how you're, are you buying this nonsense that I'm giving you? So I think emotionally inconsistency is a big one. Now, we obviously have to be careful about Amanda Knox because, sometimes people respond in what ways people think is abnormal. Yeah. Like too often here in America, we look at 911 phone calls and that was weird. How did she say this? Or they asked that, or they looked for their phone before they did the following. And in stressful situations, people react differently. And that's what Amanda Knox kind of taught us is she was in a foreign country. She was scared. Why was she showing affection to her boyfriend? She was probably self-soothing because she's scared. So just an interesting point is none of these things are perfect. Yeah. But those are some of the ones that I see that I think could help your everyday listeners.
Yeah, and for sure. And we also know that some people show stress by affiliating with others, right? So there is also this time frame that people are thinking, like you said, what does the other person want to hear and how does another person... So there can be a time frame, but I also talk about congruence, incongruence when we talk about emotions, right? You can say, I'm angry, or you can say, I'm angry.
Where the movement... you're right. Where the words, the lyrics, and the dance all line up together.
Exactly.
And you're right. I am so pissed off right now. No, you're not.
It doesn't work. No.
I think in the book I talk about the situation, and I think we've spoken about it in the past, where it was a homicide case we were working, and the main subject, his entire life, I think he blows up when he's being questioned, and people typically respond to that negatively and meet that level of emotion. They mimic what he's doing, and before you know it, they're both screaming, and that gives him the moral high ground to be like, yeah, the police were screaming at me, whatever. And my partner picked up on this, and he could see that the subject was screaming, but he didn't have the furrowed brow. He didn't have the clenched fists. He didn't have, you know, the distension in the jugular veins. He wasn't blading his body. He could see that it was fake emotion. And the worst thing we can do is mimic, you know, that elevated body language because we're just feeding into that.
Yeah.
So my partner just, you know, once again, he was extremely, oh, hey, I hear what you're saying. And within 30 seconds, that blew off. And this guy realized that wasn't working. I got to try another tactic.
Yeah, exactly.
And it was a true masterclass to see how you have to be able to control yourself before you can try to get any information from people. If you can't control yourself, you can't control anything.
Now, and before we dive into that, this story also reminds me of a case I did, which was a married woman married to someone who had an extremist Islamic ideology, and they traveled to Syria. And in this case, this woman was trying to say that she didn't want to go with him, and she didn't arrange the travels to Syria, etc. And she kept saying it, and the investigators keep asking the questions over and over again, until I said to them, why not just give it more time and be quiet for a longer period of time? Because I think she can show aggressiveness, she can show impatientness, and I'm interested in what she would do if you just let her, give her more space, not asking question about question.
Yeah.
So that she can show her real identity, if you will. And they did it. And after that, she was like, every time they didn't give an answer, but did nothing, she was like, you should write it down. You should write this down and that down. So then they started to understand what personality was behind it. Just a small intervention to what people normally tend to do in interviews. And it really helped.
Well, and, you know, in that situation, people want to remain consistent with their previous statements, right? So the more times somebody says no, the harder it is going to get them to say yes. So I don't want to ever be in a situation where we get in this tennis match of constant no's, because that never ends up where we would. In that situation, now, if it was an interrogation, I would just say, look, there's no doubt in my mind you did that. But I think you did that because I think you love your husband. And I think you love your faith. And it's very hard to question those core tenets of what you truly believe. So it's not the what. We know the what. It's why you chose to do what you did.
Yeah.
And I think once we understand the context, I think people outside this room are going to have a better idea. So it's, once again, providing that golden bridge for why somebody does what they do.
I think this is different from Dutch law enforcement culture as well, because this would be inadmissive in court, I guess.
Which is crazy.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I'm not being disrespectful.
No.
I just mean, to me, to me is like, you see this, you know, when people talk about strategically using evidence, you know, and that's great when you have evidence, right? And once again, we can talk false confessions here in a little bit, because it's a topic that is definitely part of the American fabric historically. You know, it's something that we've had to deal with and we continue to deal with. But, you know, some of the methodology is, well, I'm just going to have these inconsistencies and then I'm just going to hit him with these inconsistencies. So the case we talked about earlier, let's just say, if I just said, Ann, I've got video of you being at Tom's house at 4 o'clock and you said you weren't at his house at 4 o'clock. How do you explain for that? I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, Tom, how do you explain for that? Oh, you know what? I forgot, dude. I went over there and had a beer earlier and I'm on probation. I didn't want people to know I was drinking. Damn. It's a pretty good reason. Maybe the court believes it.
Yeah.
Okay. Or how about this approach? Hey, Tom, or John, there's no doubt in my mind you went to Tom's house. No doubt. Now, I don't hold it against you for being dishonest with me previously. Doesn't hurt my feelings. It happens. The good part is this. I don't think you woke up at 8 o'clock in the morning with ill will in your heart. I think some situational factors came into play and that led you down a road to do what you normally wouldn't do.
Yeah.
So I already know the what. I'm just trying to understand the why to provide some context to the decision makers.
Yeah.
If I'm the bad guy, which one would you rather hear?
Again.
You know?
Yeah, exactly.
So I understand is that we have to be careful with the tool set that we have, with influence principles that we have, but we try to put certain guardrails in place to make sure that somebody's not going to falsely confess. We're going to have holdback information that only the innocent, if someone leads me to a body in the middle of nowhere, that's holdback information. Yeah. If we're not going to be able to talk to somebody for 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours, I'm not going to bring in multiple interrogators. If somebody's a drug user, or what I found, just as much as if they haven't used what they normally use, I'm going to be very, very careful and probably not engage with that person. I'm not going to interrogate typically juveniles because that prefrontal cortex and the ability to have suggestion.
Yeah.
I'm not going to engage in dream sequences. I'm not going to say I have evidence that I don't have. I'm not going to offer promises, guarantees. I'm not going to yell at people. So a lot of what is out there, what people think we do, is so different than what we actually do in the room. We are non-confrontational. I do not raise my voice above this level. And I think that the people that view interrogation, a lot of times they pigeonhole us and think that we do those things, and that's just not the case. And the beauty of the situation now is that everything is video recorded, which is appropriate because it allows people outside that room to truly see what happened, and they can put it under a lens. And, sunshine is the ultimate disinfectant. And I think if we go back 50 years before cameras, if somebody had bad morals and they wanted to talk somebody into something or whatever the case may be, it would have been easier to do it in that time frame.
Yeah. But what we are talking about now is also about high quality interviewing. It's about skills, like said before from the beginning of the conversation. It's about, and you say it in your book as well, right? Self-mastery.
Yeah.
And we know it can be difficult for interviewers who have been, for instance, for years in interviewing, interrogation, and then they finally see, there are new techniques, or we suddenly find that self-mastery is more important than we ever knew. And that's also maybe for the polygraph, but also for my profession as well, right? Reading nonverbals, reading signs as well. You still need the best interviewers.
Yes.
No matter if you use the polygraph, yes or no.
Yes. So, there's been an evolution in everything, meaning before REID came about, it was, you did it. No, I didn't. They did certain things that I would say definitely by most accounts nowadays would be viewed as that case would be thrown out because of the enhanced interrogation type tactics. Yeah. So non-confrontation is obviously that has to happen. Starting from a position of, I want the truth and not the confession, definitely has to happen. It's just, you have two sides of the coin, is that many, many times the practitioners don't trust the researchers. Yeah. And the researchers view the practitioners as cavemen, right? Yeah. So you've got ignorance and arrogance on both sides. You've got ignorance on the practitioner side of, they don't know what's out there, right? They don't know that there's research out there to say, don't be doing the following. They also have an arrogance to think that they're never going to get a false confession. That will never happen to me. Whereas the academic side has the ignorance of, they think what we're doing is a caricature, that they've watched in a TV show. Yeah. You're going to do this. Or when they do their research, they program their researchers, yes, I want you to be very aggressive. I want you to scream and holler at them. I want you to do X, Y, and Z. Well, yeah, that's going to get false confessions, but that's not what I'm doing. And they're also, I want to say, a little arrogant when it comes to their study design. Well, hey, we'll sit 100 people down, which is a very small sample size, but I understand budgets are tight. But they're going to be 100 students, and they're going to be at a keyboard, and if they push this button versus that button, it'll, and there's a big red thing that says don't push it. And if you push it, it destroys the hard drive and $5,000 damage, whatever. And they create a scenario where they type this out, and then the next thing you know, they come in and they interrogate these people about, hey, you touched that red button. Is that at all, similar to somebody being accused of a murder, rape, robbery? Yeah. Now, I applaud, and I truly do this, I applaud the research, but that's coming from, what is the apples to apples comparison there? We haven't had it. And I will say, it's the same thing in Polygraph. We test students and we test soldiers that, are volunteering to do a fake crime. Yeah. And so you're testing the instrument on a fake crime, which somebody that is getting either paid or told to do that thing. So then we extrapolate, well, polygraph either works or doesn't work from that mythical situation. Yeah. So it's not like we have rats and monkeys and things that we could test these things on, is that we have volunteers, and it's great that people are doing it, but there are some holes on both sides. So how about this? How about we take what we know works? How about we take what we know can cause false confessions? Yeah. And how about let's, as best we can, insulate what the practitioners are good at and keep them from doing what has, scientifically been shown to cause that bad outcome. And that, to me, you meld the best of both worlds. When you come from a scientific standpoint and say what you're doing is wrong, it doesn't work, and it's always going to get a false confession. You can't theme anybody.
No.
Oh, and the only way you can do it right is if you do what we say. And by the way, to learn what we're teaching you, you need to pay $500 a person.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, it just seems altruistic. And are you, whereas the other side is equally as wrong. Oh, that stuff's stupid. Those PhDs, they don't know what they're talking about. No, they do. It's just
in that context,
we need to come together and have the right context. And I think when that happens, the peace model, it's very similar. And I get this pushback. I'm like, well, the peace model is very, very similar to REID. Cognitive interviewing, do this, take a step back, X, Y, and Z. I'm like, that's what I do.
Yeah.
But what they don't do is they don't allow you to theme somebody, like you mentioned earlier. Yeah. And I don't understand that. It's when somebody feels surrounded, you have to provide them an outlet. And the outlet is, I understand why you did what you did. You're not saying that I would have done it. I'm saying it makes sense that those situational factors led you down this road. And why that is viewed so negatively is beyond me.
Yeah. Yeah, and I also...
Because
Sorry.
That is what it gets, or at least in my experience, that's what's gotten hundreds of individuals to say, I did this horrific thing and I've never told another human being about it.
Yeah.
If I would have just said the evidence shows, or a lot of times lack of evidence, especially on child sexual assault cases, because it happens in the dark of night, it happens he said, she said, there's very little evidence.
Yeah.
So if I just say, she says you did this, what's their response? No, I didn't.
Yeah.
Case closed.
Yeah.
Right? So I want to provide as much information to the adjudicators as possible. And I think by doing the way we do it, that takes place.
Yeah, and I always say, there are a lot of, like we talked about before, there is a lot of YouTube videos, there are a lot of articles. I always mention the Meghan and Harry interview with Oprah Winfrey, for instance, where I also ask people, why do you want to know the lie? Why do you want to know the lie? Because to me, the lie itself is not very interesting, because the lie is only information about the resistance they show to self-preserve. This is what I like to say. So what you actually should be interested in is the motive and the intent. Where does it come from? Where does the behavior come from? And that's very difficult to build a scenario in a lab situation where you do your science. But this is a discussion that is very difficult. They think they have to research lies, but they should be doing is research motive and intent, and that's a completely different ballgame.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't know how we would do it, but yes, you're right, is that in order to study an action, you need to understand the motivation behind that action. And it's the same way when I do an interrogation. I don't focus on the what. I focus on the why, because it's easier for people to talk about the why, but it's very, very hard to study the why. So I wish we could have an fMRI instead of, that worked, and it was portable, and I could stick it on your head and I would see what parts of your brain light up.
Yeah.
And I could be immediately, Ann, come on, hook me up here. I wish I had a thermal or some other type of technology that was out there that we don't have yet, that I wish we could just put on our iPhone. But here's the thing, if we had that, Ann, society would break down.
Yeah.
Lies are the social lubricant of this world, just like they say alcohol is a social lubricant. It's when we choose to lie and when we choose to not lie that's the problem, right?
Yeah.
Is that if we lived in a society where nobody could lie, we would have a lot of hurt feelings.
Yeah.
Now, and maybe that's the Dutch, the Dutch way. Maybe you got less lies because you seem to be pretty direct, right? With your stinging criticism. So it might be a little different culturally there, but it doesn't matter what society you're in. If you couldn't lie, it would be a problem. So I don't think we're going to ever get to that point. And even if we had a perfect lie detector, one of the reasons people choose to take a polygraph is what? They think it can't be used in court. They think they can beat it, right? So, what's the same reason a lot of people walk in to buy a car? I'm just going to take a test drive. I'm not going to buy the car. Yeah. And what do they end up doing? They end up buying the car, right?
Yeah.
So somewhat similar metaphor there in that respect.
Yeah, and like you said, it's a social thing as well. I am direct and sometimes too honest. And in the past, I have seen what I've done in a government or political situation as well, because I can be perceived as a danger because she sees it and she tells it how it is.
Yes.
It can hurt status, it can hurt ego, the mice and the rascals amongst us.
Yes.
And that's difficult for people because they don't have a certain antidote to that, especially when you find things that can hurt their status and ego as well. So like I said, it's very important to have those things to be able to lie, but also I've learned to shut up as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's good. To have that little regulator that you can turn on and turn off.
Yeah. And let's talk about, because you've mentioned it often, REID and false confessions. You've also mentioned peace. We discussed a lot of other techniques, like the validation technique, like SHAR, for instance, I like to mention as well. What is still being used and what not?
Yeah. So, obviously where you're at and, through Australia, Europe, you'll see a lot of peace model, right? The planning aspect of it, you could go through the whole peace model, what the acronyms are, but some of that has to do with legal protections as well, where some countries you'll have a lawyer for the defense in all interactions with law enforcement, right? Some of that has to do also with, let's say, for instance, you're in London. How many cameras are in London? I have no idea, but it's a lot. Right? If you commit a crime in London, chances are it's going to be caught on camera. And I could have a different approach there because I'm probably going to have evidence that I'm going to be able to use. So the peace model, strategic use of evidence, America is a very, very big country. And not everything that happens here is going to be caught on camera. Not everything's going to have evidence. Yeah, everybody's got this wonderful computer in their pocket, right, that we like to use because it geolocates. But we have a lot of constitutional guarantees here in the United States that limit the ability to do certain things. There are other countries that have a peace model, so they're very protective of interpersonal reactions. But you know what? I can come get your phone. I can sneak into your house and put a camera. I can do all these other things in these other countries that, wow, that would be great if I was an interviewer, if I had access to that information, right? We do have the evidence. So in America, we have a lot of protections that keep us from obtaining some of the evidence that other countries have, right? So that's a different debate for another day. But where in America, I would say up to the 50s and 60s, you saw very confrontational methods historically. Starting in the 60s, 70s, you started to see more of and I throw REID out there from John Reed. There's many other places that teach a similar methodology, is that non-confrontational approach where you will have an interview and then you will probably have a break in time in which you will determine, do I feel this person did this thing? Do I have evidence that the person did this thing? And then many times you'll have I don't want to use the word confrontation, but it'll be a statement of intent, meaning I believe you did this thing. So you're letting that person know, basically, I believe you were involved in that situation. And at that point, what I'm typically going to do is I'm going to gauge their reaction. If I accuse you of shooting somebody that you didn't shoot, how should you react? Right? Yeah. What the heck? What are you talking about? Right? When I accuse somebody of sexually assaulting or murdering somebody and they're like, really?
Yeah.
Shucky darn. That's interesting.
Yeah.
That is a very, very deceptive response.
Yeah.
I'm going to hear denials, maybe. I didn't do it. I don't want to stay in that denial. I'm going to shut that denial down. Hey, hear me out.
Yeah.
Ann, hear me out. I, at this point, want a curated reel of, that Facebook reel of, basically what I like to call, blame, understanding, and, diminishing impact. So it's very similar to rationalize, minimize, and project.
Yeah.
Where my themes are going to be based on analogies, metaphors, other cases that I've worked, where I'm trying to understand context for the situational factors for why that person did that thing.
Yeah.
So let's say, for instance, we have a complicated case and I say to you, we're talking. Some people would consider it an interrogation. I think you could usually watch the way I speak with somebody and you wouldn't consider it an interrogation.
Conversation.
Yeah, it's not confrontation. But if I would say we're at a breaking point and I'm looking at your body language and I'm maybe trying to use mimicry to establish some comfort with you. And then I like to use leading mimicry where she's got her arms crossed. She's kind of tracking me. She's got some nonverbals where she's listening, but I want that closed off behavior to open up. I want that forward lean. So in order to do that, I'm going to assume a forward lean, hoping she reciprocates. But shoot, she's still got her arms crossed.
Just for video.
Yeah, she did, right? And so what I might do, and you can't see it, is I might just cross my wrists. I don't want to completely mimic you, but I'm going to cross my wrists because people are keen to this, this type of stuff, because they read Joe Navarro, they listen, they watch your stuff. So, a mimicry that's based on an instantaneous and full body movements and complete mirroring is problematic. So I'll be very subtle with it. And then, I'll either hope that my message gets you to unlock, or I will actually use my body language to get you unlocked, hoping that you then mirror me. And to me, I'll ultimately want to get, and once again, it's hard to tell from this perspective, but I want that confession posture from you. But in this sense, let's say, for instance, we're at this point where you're kind of, should I talk? Should I not talk? I could say something like this. I could say, Ann, what do you think should happen to somebody that shoots somebody in the face?
Yeah, go to jail.
Right.
Yeah.
Go to jail, right? Seems very specific, right? What should happen to somebody that pushes somebody off a cliff?
Yeah, I would say it depends. Well, was it intentional?
Okay, you're one step ahead of me.
Was it intentional?
You're right. It depends. So let me dial that in a little bit, Ann. Yeah. Without further information, most people on both those questions will say, send him to jail. But let me tell you about a buddy of mine named Ron. In 2006, Ron was with the U.S. military. He was a Special Forces medic, and he was assigned to a team that was trying to snatch and grab high-value targets. And they got intelligence that there were several high-value targets going to be near the city of Khost. And these targets, very high up the chain, were going to be very lightly guarded. So what they did is they assembled a team of other special operators, Afghan National Army. They infiltrate through helicopters to this position, and immediately the intelligence they determine is faulty because they get brought under fire. And Ron, being a medic, instantly hears cries for help. He runs 200 meters across the base of this hill under the withering machine gun fire, RPGs, things like that. And he gets behind this little rock outcropping, and he's rendering aid to this individual. He's stopping a sucking chest wound. He is putting in chest tubes. He's putting on tourniquets. He's hanging fluids. He's, while at the same time, monitoring to make sure nobody comes down upon them. Yeah. He starts rendering aid to another individual. And at one point, he pops the setup to get, once again, a situational awareness, and he takes a shot off the top of his helmet from an AK-47. Rolls backwards. His assault rifle, his M4, is attached to his body. He comes to. He sees this individual coming down upon them, this Taliban and Al-Qaeda member coming down upon them to basically assassinate the rest of his members of his team. He pops his M4 up, and he shoots this individual right in the head. Now, I asked you earlier what should happen to somebody that shoots somebody in the head, and you said they should go to jail. But now that I've given you some context, what would you say about that? A little different, right? So the story continues. He's rendering aid. One of these individuals is in a really bad way, and he's got to make a decision. How am I going to get this person out of here? I can't drag him across 200 meters. So what he sees is behind him, there's a drop-off. It's about a 10-foot drop. And if I can get this person down, there's some other members that can get him to a helicopter and get him to a higher level care. At that point, he's got to make a decision. He pushes the person off the cliff. Probably cause some further injuries, but injuries that can be recovered from.
You take the risk.
And that individual went to the hospital and was able to get higher level care and was able to live. Now, Ron goes on, he joins the Secret Service. I mean, this is a true story. Ron joins the Secret Service, and he's on our counter assault team. And one day, in 2019, he's working, and he gets a call. You need to come to the command post. Okay, what's going on? He goes to the command post, and then the detail leader says, hey, we need to go into the Oval Office at the White House. Wow, what did I do wrong? Oh, shoot, I'm in trouble. He goes into the Oval Office, and Donald Trump says to him, hey, son, appreciate meeting you. I'm going to give you the Medal of Honor tomorrow for your actions at the Battle of Khost and how you saved those men. He shot someone in the face. He pushed somebody off a cliff, and yet he got the nation's highest honor. So when you understand the context, Ann, of situations, and you understand the why of why people did it, we may be able to better understand. So that's, Ann, where I need you to fill in the blanks. Right now I've got a puzzle, and I don't have all the pieces. You know who's got the pieces, Ann? You do. And I want you to provide some of those pieces so that we don't make any mistakes in our assessment here. So I'm telling you a story that you want to listen to. It's transporting you to a place. I'm getting curated screen time. And the more time I have on target, the more ability I have to obtain information.
Yeah. And the same with the difficult other interrogations or interviews you did with predators, child molesters as well. We also did talk a few times about the emotional toll. So this can also be an emotional toll, understanding that maybe you did not understand the situation very well and you asked several questions, you did not get the whole story, and then it seems to be completely different. That can also take an emotional toll.
Yes.
And we both had to deal with child molesters as well. Can you tell me a little bit how it was for you professionally versus personally?
Yeah, terrible. I mean, it's a situation where when I was in St. Louis, I was dealing with this a lot, 2-3 times a week. We would work with our Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force. And what we would do is we would go out and we would do a search warrant. And then we would, if the subject admitted to downloading, possessing, or manufacturing child sexual abuse material, we would then do a polygraph to see if they were hands-on, if they had acted on those urges. And sadly, over 58% of them did, which just goes to show you that child sexual abuse material is not just about pictures. But the problem is that when I'm talking to these individuals, many times I'm rationalizing their behavior. I make John feel as if I understand, not agree with, but I understand why he did that bad thing. It's transporting me to some dark places. And as a result, it's one of those things that became, I guess, a little problematic. So because you start to have cognitive dissonance between the person that you are and the person that you're portraying yourself to be in the room. So that's where I found jujitsu, was to start doing jujitsu, because what it did is it helped kind of make me be present. Yeah. So on the first front of it, like, let's say there's no doubt this person did that thing, but they're just not explaining it to you. And I've had that on homicides where you weren't able to get the information that you needed. You weren't able to get that, clarity for the family so that they could grieve. You couldn't get the justice for the person that did that bad thing. And there's going to be those times. And anybody that says there's not, because you have these people out, once again, on YouTube and such, to say, oh, I get an interrogation every time, I get a confession every time, whatever. You don't, unless you're doing something really unethical. There's going to be times where you just don't get it. And it is what it is that my mentor would say, look, 10% of people will confess to everybody, 10% of people will confess to nobody. And then where you make your expertise is kind of everything in the middle. So there's just going to be those times. And it really beats you up when you have to fly home after you got called out to work a big case. And you're like, man, you got to call the boss and say, I apologize, I didn't get the goods. I didn't do what I do. And as a supervisor, when I got into supervision, I always wanted to be careful about holding people to an unrealistic standard. That, you're not going to get them all. You're not going to have, every story does not end, with this beautiful, happy ending. It just doesn't. Sometimes you're going to have those unknowns. You're going to have cases that turn cold, sadly. As far as when you do get the admission and when the person does go to jail, the sad part is a lot of times we've had to go to some dark places with these people in trying to understand their why. And I can think of a couple specific, situations in particular where the just manner in which the person made the disclosure and gave me their reasoning, and just the lucid, terrible nature of it, the way they just freely spoke about it. And it was just so awful that it sticks with you. And there was a while in St. Louis where I was doing a couple of these a week, and when you're talking to pedophiles a couple times a week and, the horrific things that they do, it haunts you. So I was blessed to have a great resource of Washington Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force, Dr. Stacy, and she taught me some great things about things I can do. I can not write the report at home. So I keep home and work separate. When I come home, I always do something before I come in the house. So I'll play a video game on my phone. That way I'm doing something, it could be chess, it could be something else where I'm having to think and totally separate from that. And before I write my report the next day, I go do my jujitsu. So that once again, I have to be completely fully engaged. So right before I got home, while I was at home, and right after I left home before I got to work was all something that was outside of that incident. Yeah. So that when I went back to work, then I could go back into that. So there's certain things that helped me quite a bit, because what I was finding was anytime I was going to get on a plane or I was going in my car, I was getting this little pang of panic. And I'm like, man, I know I'm not scared of flying. Well, what it was is I think my body was just like, that cognitive dissonance between who you are and what you're about to talk about.
Yeah.
It's so surreal. So those were some of the coping mechanisms that I used. And thankfully, you got to have a good support group that's there to say, hey, man, you're doing too many of these. Why don't you take a step back and have a little mini vacation there? And I've always had good friends that were able to assess that.
Yeah. And maybe it's also good because of our Dutch followers. There's a lot of research being done in the Netherlands about pedophiles, pedosexuals, and it's good to know that here in the Netherlands, our research is about what is the difference. We differentiate actually pedophiles and pedosexuals.
Yeah.
So it's good for followers who are not aware of that is to understand that pedophiles are not per definition people who have sex with children, right? Who actually do the molestation. It's the pedosexuals who have the sex. And sometimes here in the Netherlands, you also see sometimes the situation where we actually have pedophile hunters. People who actually believe or think that other people are a pedophile and they start to hunt, but they do not understand what kind of consequences that may have, because what we do know about pedophiles, someone is born like that, people are emotional detached from adults, they are not able to have a good relationship with adults as well. And they have sometimes certain features you can see, and that's very difficult for people to understand. There's a lot of discussion, and I know that we will have a lot of comments because of other people's opinion about that as well. But it's good to make the distinction.
Yeah.
So how do you...
Yeah, so here in America, a couple things. The vigilante hunters are obviously a problem, definitely in America, because sometimes these offenders are armed and the vigilantes go out, they're trying to get content for YouTube and it turns violent. Either way, they're catfishing these people and, I get the motivation. They're trying to catch bad people, right? But it's done the wrong way, and we can't make a legal case when someone does it that way. And that's the problem, is that now this person got away with it. And if you assault them, now you might have all the best of intentions, but you're going to jail. And the guy that we might have caught in a sting operation is now getting away with it. So it is a big problem. Now, I will say, as far as, pedophilia, I talk to a lot of hebophiles. So I talk to people that are sexually attracted to boys or girls that are post-puberty but pre-legal, right? So 14, 15, 16. That's why, to me, I think the definition of pedophilia is thrown around way too often, in that I don't talk to too many pedophiles because there are not a lot of pedophiles out there. True pedophilia is, I find interactions, sexual encounters with adults to be disgusting. And I only want to have relations with prepubescent boys or girls, right? That is rare. Now, when you see it, I want to absolutely investigate it, prosecute it, adjudicate it, but I don't see it as much. And the problem is that some of these operations, they look at a 19-year-old with a 16-year-old, a 20-year-old with a 17-year-old, whatever, and they're saying that person's a pedophile. They're not. And by lumping them all together, it's clogging up the judicial system for the people that we really want to bring to justice. Yeah. So that's a problem. And you talk to a true pedophile, I know it's commonly said pedophile, but when you're talking to these individuals that are truly of that ilk, it's different in how you talk to them, because it's not about the girl coming on them. It's not about the Barbie doll, this, that, and the other. They truly believe in what they're doing, right? An adult discussed them, right? So it is talking to a different individual, but I will say most of the people I talk to are not that. They're crossover offenders. Yeah. They have sex with boys, they have sex with girls, they have sex with adults. So that's where, yes, I think the research is very helpful to practitioners in that regard, to show this activity is typology with this person. And when you have this person, here's a great way to communicate with them. One, you can't show contempt. Because the moment you show contempt and judgment with these individuals, it's almost like you're taking a core value of mine and saying it's terrible and disgusting. Yes, it is, in my opinion. But when I show contempt or judgment to that immediately is going to cause them to stop talking to me. And I remember a case in particular. I was talking to a horrific individual. He was in a church. A pastor was actually in charge of their youth ministry, access to hundreds of kids, molested a couple of his kids. And I just gave you that little squint, and I gave you that judgment. And I know that locked him up from explaining any additional cases that we could have got justice for. So we have to be very, very careful when we are talking to people too. We may not have walked in their shoes. We may not agree with their choices, but we can't judge their choices in front of them because that's their journey. They made their, as we talked about earlier, they made their pick your own adventure book. Okay. And they're on page whatever. They got there a certain way. Don't judge how they got there. Try to understand why.
So how did you deal with that in the interview? So when you feel that you have certain feelings in the interview or...
Yeah, I just really catch myself doing soft eyes. And what I mean by soft eyes is slightly elevated, not an eyebrow flash, but a slightly elevated, like I wish I could afford a bunch of Botox because then I would never show an emotion, right? I just have a bunch of Botox. But in lieu of that, I try to have soft eyes and not show that reaction. Don't, furrow in the brow is... I know you, Joe, and Dr. Abby are so advanced at this stuff, but really that downward look is so problematic in any interaction. Like if somebody doesn't hear you and you say something and what? Like that is just so damaging. So even just in interpersonal relations, just trying not to show that contempt that, what? If I don't do that in an interview, I get so much more information. That's interesting that you say so, because I have also seen from trainees, but also from colleagues, that they were very consciously driven to show neutral signs. And then I always say, but there is no such thing as being neutral, because what we now know also based on nonverbals is that having a neutral face can also be connected to withdrawing, maybe even a state of freeze, which is also stress. And also what I found that probationers is they want to be able to read you as well, because they need you also to be predictable so that they can read you and know what they can get from you as well. So being completely neutral is not always the best thing to do, is what I have learned. Correct. It codes negative, right? If I am... Let's go back to caveman days, right? And you're a tribe and I'm a tribe and I come around the corner and I've never met you before. What am I instantly looking at? Your face and your hands. I'm instantly looking at your face and your hands because that's what's going to hurt me. And if I see neutral, I'm going to prepare for the worst and I'm going to code that as negative, right? Whereas, hey, how you doing? Nice to meet you. I see that eyebrow flash. Okay, I see his hands. They're open. Eyebrows are up. He's not a threat. So now the first impression... we've gotten past, because that's what's the first second. People misuse first impression so many times, right? First impression is the first second. And then everything else is after that. If my vocal tone is high and my facial expressions are negative, your first impression of me is going to revert to caveman days. Exactly. And you're going to err on the side of caution. So I can hack that easy, right? Eyebrow flash, using of your first name, lower pitch voice, a wonderful handshake that is not wet and cold. It's going to be warm and it's not going to be wet, and it's just going to be a hold versus a shake. I do those things. I'm automatically showing you some friend signs that are going to imprint upon you.
Yeah, and in these cases, I also teach people to verbalize actually what is going on in your own system, especially when you have to deal with those very difficult investigations or interviews as well. And for instance, what I do when I feel that I can be very emotional, I do say it, but not in the way that people can use it against me, but more so to investigate together. So then I would say, can you imagine that there are people who will find this very disgusting or etc.? And then there can be a lot of scenarios of answers, but you can look together to the situation, investigate it together where you can get a lot more information. So did you try that in your investigation?
Yeah, I don't think as nuanced as the way you just kind of explained it. But yeah, sometimes we are in this as a team, right? We are in this interview together. So it's very similar to just room setup. Like, so when I'm setting up a room and if I'm across a table from you, that's very adversarial. Whereas if I'm kind of off to the side a little bit and I want you to imagine no barriers, I want you to imagine soft chairs, I want you to imagine as if we're sitting around a campfire. And when we first start out talking, the campfire is very, it's roaring. We're a little bit further away because it's hot. But as their resistance cools down, so does the fire cool down. And we move forward into that fire, right? We got to lean forward into the embers. And so some of that is we're working on this issue together. Me and you and Ann are working on this issue. So when I say I feel this way, or, like you said, that's me judging you potentially, right? Whereas when I say, hey, like you just did very well, you say, hey, imagine how other people, what does that say? It says it's not me, but other people. So that was very adept at how you would do that to be able to show that maybe I don't agree with you, maybe I'm not on your team, but I'm not on the adversary as well.
Yeah, it worked for me. So it was good to see. And if it's something works, you do it more often. And then you have to take care of your own halo. Oh, it works, so you have to do it constantly. That's also not the case. But I think we can talk for a long, long time about actual techniques. But I think it's very nice that we actually talked about the self-mastery as well, about what it means to be in this business, to be an interviewer, and also helping the Dutchies who are following also to understand what is the polygraph, what is out there, what's there, what's not. So yeah, I think we could talk for hours, but viewers don't know maybe, but we are talking for more than 2 hours already.
Well, we can always do another episode,
maybe
Anne,
more
so
about
would love to do
techniques
it.
as well.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So what I always do in my interviews is also ask how you think the interview went. How was the interview for you?
And it's scary. It's scary. And what I mean by that is normally I'm not sitting across from a behavioral expert, right? So I can pull the wool down their eyes. Potentially I can say some things. I can misstep. I can touch my chin when I'm talking about my son.
I do it often. So
and here I got to be on my toes. So I appreciate you letting me go down some rabbit holes and letting me kind of dive into some stuff. Too often, podcasts or interviews, it's about them, right? It's about, let me show how smart I am. You're already smart, right? So that's the beautiful part about what you just did is you let me go down some rabbit holes and then you reel me back in a little bit. And I appreciate that.
And what could I improve in my techniques?
In your techniques. Well, on your screen, you're a little uncentered there.
Yes.
Okay, so maybe we can recenter the screen. All right, and then you're knife handing me right now. So we got to work on that. We never point and we never knife hand in nonverbals, right? We always do the Clinton or we do the Obama.
Yeah. And here we do this as well.
Is that
it's a Mark Rutte thing. Do not do this, but this is softer.
Okay, so that's okay if I come to
That's okay to do
Amsterdam.
this, yeah?
I can do this. You can do this. Okay. No, I think you did great. Obviously, here's the thing. You prepared. And that's what I preach to everybody is there's no sacrifice for preparation. If you don't have it, you can never have it. When you're in the moment, you got to have it. So you obviously read the book, so I appreciate you doing that.
Yeah, and I will leave the link to the book once it's published in the newsletter and also in this video as well. So where can people find you, Brad?
Yeah, so we'll put, once again, hopefully in the link, most people just like yourself, I talk to people on LinkedIn, so feel free to follow on LinkedIn or connect with me on LinkedIn, and that's where I like to share some content, and ultimately we'll get a website going, but the book won't come out till February, but maybe pre-orders in November, so, hopefully if you like some information in here, hopefully can translate into a book sale here or there, right, Anne? But you've been great through this whole process, and I know, I appreciate you looking at my book and being very Dutchy when it came to the critiques of it, all right?
Hope it helped
the directness
anyway,
of it. It did, because it wasn't like, it's pretty good here. It's like, that's terrible. This part's terrible.
Did I?
That's wrong. This is terrible. This is wrong. And so I appreciate that, because too many times in situations like this, we talked about it earlier, you're in your echo chamber, right? I don't want to hurt his feelings. I'm this, I'm that. So there were certain things, and I won't get into specifics, where you're like, no, don't go there. And I'm like, I'm glad I didn't. Right. So thank you.
And thank you for this conversation. Like always, it's always good to talk with you, content-wise or whatever. And we will stay in touch. And thank you so much for this very long conversation, which will be great.
Thank you, Anne. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye-bye. If this conversation stirred something in you, good. Because great interviewers aren't born, they are trained. Want to dive into this topic or bring this to your team? Check out my Investigative Interviewing Bootcamp, where we combine behavioral analysis, emotional intelligence, and field-tested tactics. Subscribe to this channel, share the episode, and follow Mastering Momentum wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want to know more, get more insights like this straight into your inbox, sign up for my newsletter via the link below. Stay sharp, stay human, and let's keep mastering momentum together.